LAX and not having a clue who I'm meeting.
Yeah.
And then, guys pick you up and then they take you in a car. You've never met these guys before. When you think back, there's no internet, there's no phones, there's nothing. I've just been picked up by literally a Mexican that's picking me up and says, oh, by the way, I'm taking you to Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
So we go to Dodger Stadium, then we do the intros and all that kind of stuff, and then stay there for a couple of nights, then back on the plane, and then to Florida, and then you meet everyone there. So for spring training, so it was a real intense time, and I look back on it now and go, geez, my daughters are 17, and I would just turn 17, and I had no worldly experience from that point of view, and I was kind of thrown into that area there of trusting people that you just didn't know.
In this episode of The Little Black Book, I'm joined by Craig Watts. Craig is the owner and CEO of PPI Promotion and Apparel. Craig's journey to business ownership is interesting as it follows a stint as a professional baseballer in the USA, several years working as a sales representative and brand ambassador in his family's sporting goods business, followed by a time as a sales representative in the business he would ultimately buy. In this episode, Craig shares his experiences with 2 failed business partnerships and what learnings he has taken into his new business venture with his best friend. He discusses how PPI managed the loss of 2 major accounts and how they have diversified their revenue streams to be less reliant on events. He talks about how important it is to know your numbers and describes the weekly health check he conducts on PPI. He also talks about the challenge he and his family have faced with his daughter's eating disorder and how the support of family and staff have helped him. Welcome to The Little Black Book, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs who provide their first-hand experiences to help others learn and grow. This podcast is brought to you by Altitude Advisory. Altitude Advisory is a modern business advisory firm helping business owners build a better business for a better life.
Hi, I'm Craig Watts from PPI. Thanks for joining us on the Little Black Book podcast.
Mate, thanks for joining us. Favourite movie of all time?
I've actually got 2, mate. I have one that's always been something that I've loved watching, and I've probably seen it about 60 times, is Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
I assume that a lot of people that have actually watched it, they've continued to watch it. You do see that it's a favourite of a lot of people. Yeah. And then just something where I just blank my mind out and I love to have a laugh. If Happy Gilmore's on, I'm watching it every time. And I think that's because I love my golf and I love Adam Sandler. I think he's hilarious, and I just mind blank myself, and it's a good time to switch off and have a laugh. So anything that's Adam Sandler-ish. Yeah, or that kind of thing, I'll watch.
It's got a lot of those movies that don't challenge your thinking and it just provides you a bit of downtime.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What is it about Shawshank though, mate, that draws you in? Because there's a lot of messages in that story about resilience and courage, and
I think you hit the nail on the head. Resilience is a big thing for me, and just the will never to give up, and a lot of hurdles that he's overcoming in that period that he's there. My daughter Ella, she's done a study on that only in the past 3 or 4 months. So we sat down and we watched the movie again together, and she did it at school. And just there's a lot of messages there. So like you said, the resilience, never give up. So many hurdles that he had to come over. So it was, but it was a pretty good man. Love those actors as well. They're pretty good.
It's a great ending.
Absolutely.
He tunnels throughout into the drain,
very much so.
Off on the beach in the end, sanding his boat.
That's cool.
Very cool. What about a book, mate, that as a child or a young adult had a real impact on you, and why?
Yeah, mate, I'm not a massive reader, which is funny. I read a lot of stuff online, but I've never really got into the books. When I was younger, there wasn't internet around, but my dad did get he was getting a subscription of Baseball America, and so that kept me up to date with a lot of stuff. But that did have a massive influence on my life, is reading those magazines and reading that stuff that we weren't privy to getting online, on TV, on the radio, all that stuff back in the early 90s and late 80s. They were the things that we had to go from. So I had a look at that question. I was thinking I don't really read a lot, but and an influence on that was definitely the baseball magazines that Dad used to get subscriptions from. So.
Yeah, cool. I'm gonna go off into the baseball stuff as we talk more, but and this might fall into this as well. What about travel? I know you've gone all around the world playing baseball and other bits and pieces. Has there been any particular travel experience that's had a real impact on you?
I think my first ever travel to the US by myself as a 17-year-old was certainly something that has stuck with me. All my other trips to the US or overseas to go and play baseball, I've blanked out a little bit. Not blanked out, that they were just a regular thing once you start to get used to it. You know, the endless amounts of trips to Brisbane, Melbourne, Perth, wherever it may be, to play in the National League, even overseas trips after that first one. I think the first one was really, really something that will stick with me forever. You know, getting on that plane by yourself, doing all those things with, not quarantine, but customs, and then getting to LAX and not having a clue who I'm meeting.
Yeah.
And then, you know, guys pick you up and then they take you in a car. You've never met these guys before. When you think back, there's no internet, there's no phones, there's nothing. I've just been picked up by literally a Mexican that's picking me up and says, "Oh, by the way, I'm taking you to Dodger Stadium."
Yeah.
So we go to Dodger Stadium, then we do the intros and all that kind of stuff, and then, you know, stay there for a couple of nights, then back on the plane, and then into Florida, and then you meet everyone there. So for spring training. So it was a real intense time, and I look back on it now and going, geez, my daughters are 17 and I would just turn 17 and had no worldly experience from that point of view, and I was kind of thrown into that area there of trusting people that you just didn't know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you could call up your dad or your mum, FaceTime, "Hey, I'm in a car, I'm travelling, I've just got off to LAX." Like, it wasn't until 2 days later that I could actually call them and say, "Hey, I'm safe."
Yeah.
So it would have been tough for them as well.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you learned? Well, I mean, what are some of the character traits that you think that first trip built in you that you've since been able to apply?
I think just communication. You know, it's always something that I've been very big at, is communicating with either my peers or people that are around me, and making sure that you just continue to communicate. That's probably the biggest thing I can take out of it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being scared and vulnerable in your life. And you know, I certainly was. You know, we're talking nearly 40 years ago. Well, actually, sorry, 30 years ago.
30 years ago. 30 years. I didn't think you were that old.
No, I was going to say I'm not nearly 60. But yeah, certainly that was, I mean, when I think back, they're the things that I took out of it, you know, being a bit stronger and more resilient in those kind of areas now. And you look at kids, when I say kids, your 17, 18, 19-year-olds, that are, you know, signing professionally to go play baseball or going over there for golf or college, who I'm mentoring or semi-mentoring a college golfer at the moment. And, you know, the AFL footballers, they sign a contract to go play for Hawthorn or North Melbourne and all these kind of kids, and they're homesick within 6 months, and they're literally an hour and a plane away, and their parents could be there in literally 4 hours.
Yeah.
There's so much difference to look at that, and I think today's age, possibly they could be a little bit more resilient in those areas and trust themselves.
Yeah.
I think they need to trust themselves because we've kind of, as a parent, we've been giving too much support, I think, for that generation. So not that we don't want to support our kids, because it comes naturally, but we've got to let them run and be free a little bit as well.
Let them go and be exposed to stuff. You know,
exactly. I
take
think exposure. Yeah, so, for sure.
Now, mate, you mentioned baseball, and you know, I know baseball, you know, has been a massive part of your life, right from when you literally grew up with you might have been born with a baseball mitt on your hand.
Yes,
who knows? But talk to me about that journey, because it has taken you all over the world. You know, you've had some great experience playing national teams, state teams professionally in the US. Talk to me about how that all came to play, some of your key, learnings and challenges as part of that journey before you came back to Adelaide and got into business.
You know, baseball has been a big part of my life, and I'm sure Tony Catt's been on this show before, and Tony's my stepbrother, and we grew up playing, at Sturt Baseball Club for many years, and knowing my dad played a lot as well, so kind of going out to games and watching Dad play and be part of it. I always knew that was going to be my game. I didn't know where it would take me because we didn't have the internet and all those kind of things. You didn't hear much of guys going over to play in America. A fellow Sturt Baseball Club member and player, Mark Hutton, ended up signing with the Yankees when he was 17.
Yeah.
And I was 13 or 14 at the time, so that was a pretty special time for the club that happened. And I guess it was then that we thought, well, hang on, there's more places that we can go other than little old Adelaide and playing for the South Australian Giants, Adelaide Giants at that time. So that became a little bit more open. Then making state teams and national teams after that, we saw a lot more scouts coming to the games.
Yep.
that we'd never seen before. So when I was 16, 17, all of a sudden there was a Dodgers scout, there was a Yankee scout, there was probably the main 8 teams, there was a scout at the Nationals. And it wasn't until 1990 and 91's Nationals that there was a significant amount of scouts there, and they were making approaches to different players and so forth. And at that stage, I think there was only 6 or 7 Australians that had signed professionally outside of that were playing in the minor leagues. There was 3 playing in the major leagues at that time, and that was Craig Shipley, Dave Nilsson, and Graham Lloyd. And they were at a different level. They're a bit older than us as well, but there was only 6 or 7 people playing in the minors. So from that, I had a pretty good series here in Adelaide versus Victoria, New South Wales, Queensland, and then made the national under-18 team, which we had a squad meeting. I think it was around about early April, maybe late March, where it was, and didn't really think much of it. And the actual scout that was for the Dodgers, he was on the Australian coaching squad. Right. And then at the end of the actual tournament, the squad training, he came into the dorms, and this was at the Institute of Sport, so we were at the Institute of Sport for 3 weeks. And he came up to me in the dorms and said, "Oh, look, I'm coming back to Adelaide. I'm following you back. I need to have a meeting with you and your dad. I'm pretty keen on signing you with the Dodgers." And out of that whole team of 30 kids that we had there at that time, I was the first one approached, which was great. Which was great when I look back at it. I think there was about 9 or 10 kids that had signed out of that for the next 12 months. But that was kind of how it approached, and then basically came back. And I was still playing a bit of footy at that time, so I didn't know whether I was going to play footy or baseball or whatever. And my dad and I we didn't know who to talk to. Like I said, there was no internet, there was nothing. So this guy, Jim Stokel, legendary baseball scout for the Dodgers, he sat down with me and Dad and another gentleman, Brian Cakebread, and said, "This is the contract, here's the money." Back then it was $27,500 US, and the dollar was at 85 cents, so probably similar to now. But Dad and I, we looked at it and we've gone, well, what do we do? Dad didn't want to sign that night. He didn't want to. He wanted him to go back and do some homework. But no, me being a little bit stubborn, I said, well, why not? Yeah. And it was a bit of a regret, funny enough, because we did hear about 2 weeks later, that the scout for the Toronto Blue Jays was sitting in the restaurant watching me have dinner with the Dodgers, and he was about to call me and offer me a contract that was almost 3 times the size. But that's what they say, They talk a lot, don't they? So, but that was something that I always remember there. So from there, signed the contract, and then went straight over to LA and Florida and did spring training. Had no idea what I was getting into. Absolutely none whatsoever. I mean, funny enough, I did hear a story that when they saw my name up on the training lists at the squad there, they were actually thinking I was black because my last name was Watts. Yeah. And in America, a lot of black guys' last name's Watts. Yeah. So all the brothers over there were thinking, "Oh, this is fantastic. We get another brother coming in, and blah, blah, blah. He's from Australia. What brother from Australia is coming over?" And it was quite amusing when they saw this white guy had no clue what was happening, come in and then start speaking Aussie, and they had no clue what was going on. So that was quite good. Yeah.
So you had 4 years with the Dodgers and then came back. What happened over that journey? Just didn't quite work out? Or?
Yeah, look, back then, each Major League Baseball club had 30 visas that they could give out. So that was between the Dominican Republic, Venezuelan, Canadian, there's a couple of guys from Holland, Dutch, and Australian. So they had 30 visas over the whole organisation that they could actually give, which was nothing, absolutely nothing. And then it grew to about 36 visas up until a certain period of time. So we really had to get good quick. That was the thing. So, at 19, 20, I got released from a contract, and I wasn't even close to hitting my prime. Not even close. And you see guys now that are 19, 20, and they're still playing low A ball, rookie ball, not even signed yet. Yeah. And they're getting an opportunity. They're 25, 26, 27 to actually prove themselves, because there is no visa issues now. So the visas are open. They can have as many per club as what they want. So there was a number of Australian baseballs, and I'm sure a number of Dominican, Venezuelan baseballs around the world that got their career cut short in that level because of the visa issue. Yeah. And there's other things that you can do, but that was the reason why I came back. I had another opportunity when I was 23. Ended up having a pretty good season with the Giants and got invited back to spring training, and I had a pretty good spring, but they just couldn't find a spot for me once again, visas and stuff like that. So, so all up, it wasn't bad.
You played for Australia as well?
I briefly played for Australia. I played all my juniors, played a lot of junior stuff there, and then I was in the Olympic squad in 97 and 98. Never actually played at any tournament ball, but played a lot of, played against Team USA, Team Japan, all of that kind of stuff in the preamble to the World Cups and so forth. Didn't make that final 22. I was a bit unlucky. People go, well, you didn't do hard enough, but it was at that time where professional baseballers could come back and play. So after the 96 Olympics, the 96 Olympics was a great Australian team. Those guys, whilst they were fantastic players, none of them actually signed professional contracts. So there was, in 96, there was probably another 30 kids or 30 guys that are 20 to 25 years old that weren't eligible to play. And then when we became eligible to play in 97, the floodgates opened. It was huge. There was guys in that squad that were fantastic. There were guys that were American that became Australian during that time. The Greg Jelkses and the Ron Johnsons of the world. These guys are household names in our life, but they were American, became Australian. Paul Gonzalez, Australian. And these guys, they ended up taking some of our spots. But they were good enough to do it, but they just went Aussie from birth, but they were eligible. So,
well, it's interesting. You talk about that. I was talking to my wife about it because the Olympics are on here at the minute, the Tokyo Olympics, and you have a look at basketball. And used to have baseball, but you got your basketball that's there. You got soccer. You got all these professional sports, tennis, golf, that have now got the professional players in that. Up until 1996, it was all amateur Olympics, and the whole landscape of that significantly changed.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you have a look at the German basketball team, and there's some names that are Smith and whatever it is. They ain't German. Their grandfather was born in Germany, or their great grandfather, and they happen to get a European passport. So there are some rules that kind of get bent a little bit. I know there's a number of Australians that were available to play for the UK. And probably Italy as well. In baseball.
No, for sure. So, mate, you came back from the US. Did a bit of work around the place in the sports.
Worked for the family business.
For the family business.
Yeah.
So talk me through, I guess, that journey of working with your dad in the family business, and then obviously going off and doing your own thing with PPI.
Yeah. So I started when I came back in 94, 95. I was kind of, ventured up to Darwin, didn't know if my baseball career was, I went up there to coach and did a whole bunch of stuff. My wife's mother passed away whilst we were up there, so we came back down and then did a couple other little odd jobs, not really sure what we were going to do. And then Dad and I had to sit down and he said, do you want to come on and work in the family business? And at that time, I think I was like, 21, 22. It was something that, I'd been around that kind of industry for years, packing boxes and doing stuff at Dad's work. So I went on board with that, and it went well. I think, being in the sales side of it was something that I really wanted to do. So the first 2 or 3 years I was kind of mulling around as, Dad's sidekick a little bit and understanding, but I really, then he gave me a couple of the brands that were doing really well and kind of took that on board. And I think by the end of the time that I was, working for Dad, I was really looking after these senior brands a lot, and he was doing more of the back end stuff, which was good. And it gave me, even though I was working the family business, and some of my mates used to pay me, working for Dad and everything like that, but you got to start somewhere. And I think I learned a lot of that resilience and stuff for working in the family business and having brands that weren't your Nikes, Adidas's and so forth. We had companies like Brooks and Head Tennis, and so Head, the best tennis racket in the world at that time was Wilson probably, and Prince. So Head was a second tier, third tier. Brooks, then you were competing against Asics and New Balance and Nike and Adidas. So having those second tier brands, actually, the amount of times I used to go into sports stores and, here he comes, he's trying to sell us some Brooks and, whatever it is. And then it kind of gradually became, getting phone calls and saying, hey, you guys are doing a good job out there. We're seeing podiatrists and doing all those different things. So, it was good to work with the family business and having those second or third tier brands and getting that resilience and not accepting no for an answer.
Yeah. So how was it working with your old man, with your dad?
Oh, mate, it was actually pretty good. You know, we're very similar beasts, and working for family is always tough. But we did a pretty good job, I think, together. There was always going to be a time where I had to move, and whether that was staying in the sports industry and moving interstate or getting another opportunity with PPI, which we'll touch on later. But you know, it was pretty good, and I think also it was a good time for me being involved in the family business and still playing professional baseball within the country with the ABL, you know, knowing that I could leave at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go to do my workout, you know, or I could have Friday off that I knew that I was travelling to Perth or whatever it was. That was something that was good for me to do, and then not have to worry about asking, you know, your boss for time off, which is a big thing for Australian baseballers right now. You know, having that time off and they're not getting paid for it and getting paid their small amount of money. It was a good thing for me to have there. So, you know, working with Dad was good, and you know, he's obviously one of my mentors and someone that's been around me for a long time. So it was a good time. I don't regret it at all.
Yeah. What were some of the challenges that you had? Because you know. I know your dad a bit, and I know you that you can both be pretty strong-minded at certain things.
Yeah, I've chilled a lot. I've chilled a lot, Matthew. Yes, it's something that I've thought about a lot. Dad's been a big part of my life, but you know, Monday mornings was a massive challenge for me. You know, like talking to me about baseball for the first 3 hours. Yeah, it was huge. So you know, like sitting there going, "Oh, do we have to do this again?" And you know, it was tough, but I think we got through it, and we kind of, I think towards the end of it, I think I left when I was like 29, just before my 30th birthday. Yeah, it was getting better.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Talk to me about then PPI. How did you find your way there and now?
I think I was looking for something different. I mean, you know, 29 years old, and you know, my dad's really young. So, you know, he's young in comparison to other parents. So, you know, when I was 29, Dad was 50. So he was same age, nearly same age to me now. You know, he always said, "Oh, when I retire, this will be all yours, son," you know, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, you know, do I really want to be 40, 41, still working in the family business as a rep? You know, maybe there might have been other opportunities. So I was looking around. I really wanted to get in the liquor industry. You and I have got a good friend in Jason Goods who, you know, was in the liquor industry, and I always saw what those guys were doing. So I thought this was a good segue. I got the opportunity to work for PPI, going back a step, through a gentleman called Mike Higgs. And Mike was the owner of PPI, and he was also a member in the baseball fraternity. And I was sitting down with him one day and hadn't really had much of a chat with him, and he's asked me what I'm doing, and I asked him about his business. He's gone, "I might have an opportunity for you to come in and be a rep." And I thought, well, promotional marketing, doing a lot of merchandise for the liquor industry. That was my end goal, was to go in there, meet some people from the liquor industry, and hopefully, you know, move over to the liquor industry at some stage. Didn't turn out that way, but I'm pretty happy it didn't. So that's where it kind of started. Ended up working for them, you know, just prior to my daughters being born. Our first daughters, like literally, I started work 3 weeks before the twins were born. So, and I basically went in there with open eyes and a lot of people that I knew that I could contact in the world of business that would be doing merchandise and have opportunities with such a good company that's, you know, well known in the industry. So started there, and I was account manager for 3 years, and then the opportunity to become a business partner or partner in the business hit up in 2007.
Yeah, cool. And so then to, you know, that transition from being employee to business partner, how did you find that?
I actually really enjoyed it. Going back a few years, back in the early 2000s, my wife and I had an opportunity to buy a Subway. We ended up buying that with some people that currently own Subways. So they were the Hood boys, the Hood brothers that owned Glenelg and Marion, and we had the opportunity to start up Blackwood. So we had a taste of running our own business there for a little while. I certainly did enjoy it. I didn't feel that I was an employee towards the end of 2006, 2007. I felt that I had a bit of an idea, kind of getting a bit older, you're 32, 33, you know, kind of which way you want to go. And then Mike and I had a chat when the national sales manager decided to leave the business and start up his own promotional company. And then at that particular time, Mike said, "Well, what do you want to do? You know, he's nearly retired. What do you want to do?" So I said, "Well, mate, I'd love to, you know, have an opportunity of buying into the business or becoming a partner." So that was a good opportunity that I had. I knew that I had some good people around me that I could talk to about that, and in Tony and Dad and so forth. So we had some good people in there that could do it. But it was an interesting changeover as anyone goes into business. I think I was comfortable because I knew the industry.
Yeah.
You'd been in the industry for a while, so it was just the other parts of it, and I've always loved my numbers and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. So, you've been in business with a couple of other partners before. You're not in the Subway stuff anymore.
No.
You had to, you got out of that. How have you managed the dynamics of working with business partners, and what's worked and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, really interesting question. So Mike's and my relationship was pretty good. We ended up having a very good relationship in regards to business partners. He was an older gentleman that was going into his retirement, and I used him as a bit of a mentor. Then we employed a general manager at that particular time, and that was a good thing for us to do. Let Mike go and do his retirement, me be a partner and running it, and have a general manager that didn't have a financial interest.
Yeah.
And I kind of, after the first year and a bit of that, the gentleman that was our general manager, who I won't mention on here, but he was great. Like we had a chat in China and Hong Kong about possibly becoming partners together. And at that particular time, it was quite good. So we ended up buying Mike out in June of 2010. So we ended up becoming 50% shareholders of the business. And it was the toughest 4 years of my life.
Yeah.
Toughest 4 years of my life. And albeit our business actually thrived and grew to the detriment of our relationship.
Yeah.
Which was really, really tough to do. And I'm currently in a partnership in another business which is going extremely well, and it's actually with my best friend.
Yeah.
And that's going great, and we've never had an argument, and that side of it's been fantastic. But there are partnerships that don't go well.
Yeah.
And you can get through it, but it's very tough because it does take a toll on yourself and also your family, your sleep. Yeah. It's a horrible time.
So how did you work through those issues, mate? Like, I get, it's a challenge. I've been in exactly the same shoes as you, with former business partner and so on. But so how did you then navigate your way through it? Because
it was tough. Yeah. It was really tough. I mean, I think back then we're talking 7 years ago, and then prior to that, so we're talking anywhere from 2011 through to 2014. It was a 4-year period. It was tough. I mean, it would have been tough for both of us. Yeah, I'm not sitting here saying that I was the best. The best partner that anyone can have. I mean, I obviously had traits that would have annoyed him, and he would have had traits. We did have traits that annoyed me. There were some great things that he did for the business operationally, but there were things that I didn't agree with, and he didn't agree with me. So we both had to navigate that. I think partnerships are tough at the best of times. They're like a marriage, but there's different ways you can approach questions, and I think that if you can do that correctly, the partnerships will work. And for instance, if I thought that something was black, and I go to you and I say, "Oh, what colour do you think this is?" And you say, "Oh, look, it's more of a brown," and then they've got an issue. Okay, but if I go to you and say, "Hey, look, I think this colour's black, but I'm not really sure. What are your thoughts?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, it's not bad, but if it's brown, then we've got a conversation piece. We've got something that we can work on." Yeah, I think that when there are issues that are brought up that hasn't got the other person's, what they're thinking in. There is that issue there, and that's where I found it difficult with this particular partner. There was always an argument at the end of it, whether it was right or wrong or not. Yeah, there was just a reason to have an argument. And as much as you've known me for a long, long time, a lot of people actually thought I was argumentative. I actually don't like confrontation, but if confrontation's there, then I think just my normal ability was to get my back up a little bit. Now I'm a lot more chilled, from being in business and being a bit older and so forth. That's been a great trait that I've been able to kind of improve on. But, it's very difficult from a partner point of view.
And definitely that whole communication framework and having the right conversations or the right perspective when you're having those conflicts or whatever, and listening as opposed to speaking, they're all very important things.
Listening as opposed to speaking is a big one, right?
Yeah. So how did you, in terms of this, mate, how did you resolve it? And then the extension to that, from having gone through that relationship where it's really difficult and strained and challenging for each of you, what are your learnings from that you've then since applied to your new business partnership that you've got with Jason?
Yeah, so we didn't really resolve. The resolve was someone was going to get out.
Yeah.
That was basically it. So it took a 6-month project to get that out. And I guess because I'd been there for a lot longer and he was only there for the 4 or 5 years, it was a natural ability for me to go there. So I think the hardest thing for me to do during that time was actually get the funds.
Yeah.
Like at that particular time, the business was going really well, and so it was worth a little bit, especially going out. So getting that all done, when it finally came to fruition and it happened, there was a certain amount of relief. But then it was like, oh dear, it's all on me now.
Yeah.
So that was something that was good. And I just had to, I think the first week that I got back from the Christmas break and I was all on me, I think we had like 2 of our computers, our big Apple Macs broke down, had to get new ones. And it's all of a sudden, there's 15 grand that you had to find somewhere that you didn't have. And there was, so this was all kind of new. But, just being resilient and thinking back to what, be good at what you're good at, don't try and do anything. So the first 12 to 18 months or 2 years was really just continuing to get the business to, work well like it has been, and paying off that debt. I think that was a big thing that I wanted to make sure that we, and paying off that debt. So, the first 2 to 3 years after I'd paid off that debt was a really good pat on the back for me and the business itself. So, to have that was something that I really enjoyed doing.
Cool. Well, what about then, like you've gone into this new business, your best mate, and, having... Like I said, you always learn. Hopefully, you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
What have you done differently, or what frameworks have you put in place that are different than what you had previously that is helping the current?
Oh, look, I think the banner crew that Jason and I have gone. So Jace got made redundant from one of the big breweries and had an opportunity. He said to me one day, "I'm really keen on getting into business by myself and being my own partner." And at that particular time, I had the opportunity to buy another business. I wasn't really thinking about it because it was, I've got this PPI beast that I'm looking after, and if I went and did this, then I can see that would crumble a little bit, so I didn't want to get into it. So I kind of parked that for a little while. And then when this happened, I said, well, there's an opportunity here, but I can't be that guy that's there every day, all day with you, and because it was a similar kind of business.
Yeah.
I think to answer your question, the reason why this has worked so well and it continues to work is that we're not in each other's footsteps all the time. We have different roles to play within the business, and he's actually running the business on a day-to-day basis, and we speak, a couple of times a day, sometimes 4 or 5 times a day, sometimes not every couple of days, but we know what our role is, and my role is not to mentor him because Jason, he's certainly a very astute guy and he knows his stuff. But just more to guide in that particular area, because one of the things that he had to overcome was not only learning a new industry, but to learning to be a business owner.
Yeah.
So 2 very, very tough issues to have. One thing becoming a business owner when you know what the industry is, or one thing to go into a new industry when you haven't got that. But to do them both at the same time, damn, it's a tough one. So
yeah. So how do you structure it now? Like in terms of your communication, do you have stuff formalised that you have regular catch-ups, or is it all pretty fluid?
It's pretty fluid at the moment. We were doing some catch-ups early in the piece. It's now been 3 years come September that we've been going, which has kind of flown, and the business has grown dramatically well on that side of it. And I needed to make sure that I kept PPI going as well, especially during the last 18 months.
Yeah.
It's been more just guiding Jason in the right direction on where to go to purchase stuff. You know, we've been doing it for 20 years. I can't expect someone to know those things, you know, even if you've got a guide.
Yeah.
You know, so, but it's been pretty tough the last 18 months because we haven't had a chance to go and do our, you know, our national meetings and our national conferences and see new products and see new items and so forth. So we've just been kind of keeping each other involved. So we'll catch up formally probably every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then informally could be, like, I think I've spoken to Jason 3 times today.
Yeah.
You know, and they're just little things. He was just asking a couple of questions on, you know, where to go for this or whatever it may be. So, and then he can pass that on to his employees.
Yeah, cool. Now, mate, you know, COVID's obviously been a big thing over the last, 12, 18 months or thereabouts. You know, talk me through how you've navigated your way through that for the business, mate.
Yeah, it's been a scary time. And when things get taken out of your own hands with anything, it's a tough one to swallow. So when it first happened, we had a good chat with our employees and we didn't know that we were going to get that COVID relief in regards to JobKeeper. So spoke to them, we put them all on kind of smaller hours. They were all fine with it. Everything was great. And then JobKeeper came in and we all worked together pretty well. But it's our biggest problem has been the events side of the business.
Yeah.
You know, we had the Tour Down Under, which has been our baby for, near on 10 years. And it's something that we've really based. We haven't based our business on events, so that's a good thing. But we were going down that track and having fun with the events that we were doing, especially the 2 biggest in the Tour Down Under and Adelaide 500.
Yeah.
So, and then when the Adelaide 500 kind of got announced that they weren't continuing on, that was a bit of a kick in the guts because that was our baby, second baby that we were really getting into, and we were really enjoying and seeing some fruits coming through from that. So that getting taken away with you for not doing a bad job is tough. Like if you're doing a bad job in something and you get something taken away from you, then you got to have a good hard look at yourself.
Yeah.
But when those things get taken away from you, it's tough.
So there are 2 very big clients or accounts that were there through the business. How strategically then do you manage around that, or what have you done to manage around that?
Well, we're just spending more time on our clients that aren't event based.
Yeah.
So there is a couple. We've still got a couple of event based programs that we're doing. With the government and with SATC. So we're still doing the Tour Down Under, and we're just navigating that at the moment. And we're going to probably provide more local source product than overseas stuff.
Yep.
But, we're working with, Chris Lloyd at the Cheese Fest and, a couple of the guys in at the SATC with Tasting Australia and different events and so forth as well. But no one knows anything. They just, we just can't make decisions. Everything's quite fluid. Even we've got some things going on with the Royal Show happening in September. We just don't know.
Yeah.
And look what happened to Queensland this weekend. They've gone from being a 3-day lockdown to a 10-day lockdown as of this morning.
And it's so hard to come up with strategies or business plans when, like you say, the government could lock it down in 30 seconds.
Oh, 100%. We go back to 2 months ago when things were going well and Sydney wasn't in the issue and everything like that. I put everyone back onto full time in the last 6 to 8 months. We've given our employees pay rises where they've deserved it, and all of this kind of stuff. And then a week and a half later, it's like Sydney's in lockdown, Melbourne's in lockdown, Adelaide's in lockdown. You get a lockdown. It's been tough. So in my industry, you just can't. You just got to continue to go with who's spending money with you and who you've got good relationships with, and continue those relationships. Going back to the Adelaide 500 when that was taken off us and we knew that was gone, I looked at the hours we spent on it and it wasn't probably as profitable as what I thought it was. So whilst it was great as a headliner, or a loss leader, as some people say, it kind of gave us time. My graphic designer, we were talking to him and the hours that he was spending on the Adelaide 500, and now he's free to do all of these things that we've wanted him to do for years. And, it's not a bad thing. It changes the perspective a little bit. Yeah, it takes a little bit out of your cash flow. But
But I guess in that, it's really important. One of the key lessons there is to actually know your numbers and who your profitable clients are and where you're actually making money so you can focus. Because you're right, it's quite often that you see these big clients, they're a big chunk of revenue, but when you actually drill down to the underlying profitability of what those clients look like, well, sometimes a lot of businesses are better off not having them.
Yeah, look, one of the attributes that I've brought down to enjoying my numbers. Now, I'm not an accountant like you guys and all that kind of stuff, but I do bounce off a lot of people and I do, look at those areas and break it down as much as I can, because that's part of our business. Even though I'm a salesperson, that's, what I've been doing for years and years and years, I still like the back end of it. And every Thursday I do a health check, a business health check, which has been really, really important for me, especially since my other business partner and I separated in 2015, early 2015. Doing that health check on a Thursday has been absolutely imperative and something that I continue to do today.
Tell me about the health check. What does that look like?
Oh, look, I just do a numbers health check. So there's 4 or 5 key areas in my business that I have a look at. We've got a very good system, CRM, that continues to give me a good whip. Yeah. So the whip's really important, obviously, for future revenue. Yeah. I also look at, my debtors and creditors, having a look at that and making sure that there are debtors, one's higher than the other, and we want to make sure that the right ones are higher than the other. Yeah. Obviously, your bank as well, and cash flow, and making sure you got that. So they're the 3 or 4 items that I kind of just had a look at. The whip's really important in our industry, and also we have to pay a lot of deposits to factories and to suppliers prior to us invoicing our client. Yeah. So we don't traditionally hold stock, but if we're getting orders for Cheese Fest, for instance, where we've just ordered 11,000 bags, 11,500 bags, we've had to literally go and pay the factory for that, and we won't be charging the client until we get it. We might ask them for a 25% deposit, which we are doing. Yeah. But so we've taken into account we've actually paid for that. Yeah. So that's part of the health check that I've always done there.
No, that's cool. So many business owners don't do that. So
it's funny you should say that, because I'd had spoken to a number of guys and a lot of them don't. I couldn't believe it when I heard that. So, if you can get some advice, do a health check. Every 2 weeks, just tick about 4 or 5 boxes that that are things that...
Got to know your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, cool. What about other challenges, mate? So, we've spoken about, interesting, your business partner issue and COVID. What else? Has there been any other major challenges, mate, that you've been through?
Not major challenges. I think our challenges on a daily would be, the 2 major challenges that we find is supplier mistakes. So the things that are taken out of our hands that at the end of the day, our clients are looking at us and it's our problem, but our supplier mistakes. But they're the things that we're trying to get better with communication and talking to them, making sure that they communicate with us. So I'm talking about, if we've given the correct artwork but they haven't read it and they've gone ahead and printed, 2,000 T-shirts with the correct colour on it, incorrect colour on it, and those issues there, they happen. Yeah. They happen a lot. No one likes to lose money. Yeah. But there are times there, and I'm big at not looking at the problem. For them, I'm looking at the solution. That's my big one. Is that when my account managers come up to me and talk to me about, I've got this problem. This is happening. Okay, well, we know that there's a problem. Yeah. Let's look at the solution. What are we doing to fix it? And that's been something that I've really stood by in the last 10 years. Let's look at the solution. Then once we've unpacked that and we've done that, then we'll go back and have a look at how that problem doesn't happen again.
Yeah, cool. Mate, earlier we were talking, with one of your daughters, you got twin girls is 17 and, one of them is got an eating disorder. Yep. How, from a family and from a business perspective, mate, how have you juggled the demands of being a supportive husband and father in a really challenging situation, and then but with the demands of a couple of businesses as well, mate?
Yeah, look, it is tough. It's the last 2 years has been pretty tough on the family. Yeah, young Mia, she has I think it's type A anorexia. So it's been a tough mental battle for her on the food intake and and what she looks like and so forth. So there are days where we feel like she feels like that she's getting better, and we feel like she's getting better, and then it'll just break down. So, and that was early in the period too. I think early in the first 12 months it was a real tough one. We've learned a lot. Tash, my wife, has been amazing on how she's dealt with it. And you and I were discussing earlier on what it would be like if Tash was working as an employee at another business, or if I was an employee at another business, on the time that we're spending with her, with doctors, with psychiatrists, going to hospital, doing those kind of things and whatever. So I'm grateful that I've got an opportunity to do it. My staff have been amazing in regards to support there, but there comes a time where you still got to go back to work and switch off a little bit, but it is tough. That's a big thing about work-life balance, making sure that you've got the ability to spend with your family and do those things as well.
Yeah.
So that's been good for me, but it is tough. It's tough on the whole family. It's tough around the people around you. We've got some friends that are going through the same thing at the moment, which we're kind of bouncing off a little bit, and they're bouncing off us.
Yeah.
So you do have a lot of ways to do that, but you see this disease and it's not a friend. It's not a friend.
No. So, but having that support network and being able to have the flexibility to go and plan around that, I suppose, is really important.
Oh, huge. My operations manager, Paul, he's been amazing. My main staff, all my staff have been amazing. Esther and the team. They've been really supportive in that, and I think that's another thing of having a team and small business is actually the communication and having the respect for each other.
Yeah,
we've had challenges at PPI where we've had people's parents pass away. We've had 2 bouts of cancer in our business, and one's both of them are still current, and we're still supporting those people. We've had COVID marriages that didn't go ahead twice. We've had a number of babies birthed in PPI in the last 10 years. So there's a lot of good things and a lot of bad things, but the communication that we've had and with the staff, and I've always been a big advocate for them being able to go out and do those things if they need to have a day off to go and do those personal things. Just let me know. Don't call me up on a Monday morning saying, I'm not feeling well and blah 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 because you had a big night on the booze. Just say, Craig, I had a big night on the booze last night. I'm not coming in today, but I might do some work at home. I'd rather that information than the other. Yeah. I just like that. And we've got a pretty good team.
Yeah, it's that transparency and the communication and being there to support each other.
100%, cool. Yeah.
Do you have a life motto?
I've got 2, and one of them is tattooed on my body. So what doesn't kill me makes me stronger.
Yeah.
Which could be another podcast at some stage, because when I was younger, I was in a massive accident, a car accident. So I kind of went from that, and I've always used that. So I've got that tattooed on my rib cage. Yeah. So probably the most painful place you can get a tattoo. Yeah. I've actually got another little motto I've been living with, and we've mentioned him on the show today, but Tony Catt has always, he's probably mentioned on this, if you always get what you've always done, if you always do what you always have, you always get what you always got. And that's such a, it kind of rings through for me a little bit, so you always continue to, change it up a little bit. If you're looking for something different, don't continue to do those, whether it's bad or good or indifferent. But that's one that's always, Tony's always said it, but I haven't really thought about it too much for the last 12 months. I certainly have been thinking about it.
No, for sure. But it's interesting, your motto there, and then drawing right back to the first question I asked you about the movie and the Shawshank Redemption, and the resilience and courage and the other things that you've gone through. It's definitely been through plenty of
it's funny. I mean, the people that I've known for a long, long time, I've had different people see my journey. Yeah. The journey, whether it be personal or sport or whatever it is. And, I've had, certain people think that I wasn't a nice person back in the day, or I had different, values or whatever it is. And, people change, and there are different things, that happen. So, always, you can change. You can do that. I'm doing a lot of, men's health stuff at the moment, and, mentoring some younger kids, and I love my coaching, and, there's a lot of deep breathing that I'm doing at the moment and cold therapy. I started doing some stuff with the breathing and going back into deep thoughts and just trying to better myself a little bit as best as we can. So I've got a couple of guys that I'm working with on that that have been good. So
cool. Tell me more about that, because I know you mentioned you do a bit of mentoring, and I know you've been into your coaching with baseball and other things. Do you have any coaches or mentors that you work with yourself? So from a sport point of view, one of my best managers or coaches was a guy called Tony Harris, very famous in the Australian baseball world of baseball of coaching, and he's gone into the mentoring side of the world, and so I still talk to him on occasions, and he does a couple of podcasts and stuff like that, and so I still look at him, and when I'm feeling a bit blue or whatever it is, I'll call him up and do whatever. But I kind of I had to think about this, and I've actually got a number of people that I love bouncing off, and I think, the friends that you've got around you. I play golf on Wednesday with a group of 6 or 7 guys that are in business for themselves, and a couple of doctors there and a couple of accountants here and whatever, and we all use each other as almost like our own little tech group. And, so, just talking about different things, and a couple of builders here, I think it's important that you do chat to the people that you respect around there, and whether they're your mentor, they're not your mentor. I think it's important to have a chat with them. Tony, I speak to quite a bit, and I enjoy getting those different aspects of it. You can kind of pick, like a cherry tree, you kind of pick off that a little bit. So that's cool.
Which is good.
Mate, it's been fun. Thanks for joining us.
No worries. Thanks, brother.